part of this is about the underlying self-conception of American capitalism and the American ethos. And that doesn't mean that the world doesn't change and that cities don't evolve. Worlds change, but none of it is inevitable.
Housing in San Francisco is just seemingly case study after case study, everything from gentrification to housing prices to what happens when tech sweeps the city, et cetera, et cetera. I've seen all of that stuff in the Lower Polk District.
The cost of living in the city is exorbitant, and the current rates, if you've been in a rent-control apartment, if you have to now find a place at market rate, the difference, it's unaffordable. Because it's not that you're just losing your place, you're losing your life as you know it.
A study in 2015, San Francisco Arts Commission said 70% of the artists in San Francisco Bay Area had experienced displacement. That was 2015. Things have gotten worse since then.
We were facing new construction, new development that was changing the nature of the building stock and certainly the demographics of the neighborhood. And a lot of people who had been long-term residents were feeling the pressure from that.
A lot of people are getting pushed out of the city. And where do you go when your community and your work is in one place and you can't afford to live there anymore?
San Francisco is its people. I mean, we got some beautiful sights and natural beauty, but at the end of the day, what makes this city what it is? People who live here.
The small merchant in San Francisco is a gem. They make our community and our culture in San Francisco. They bring the character of the city alive, and they are over 95% of all the businesses in the city.
With the rental market shifting, it's important that people understand the value of their small business tenants. So now more than ever, it's really important that people work with their commercial tenants and they understand that small businesses are a value and a service for the neighborhood, not just for the building.
I think the biggest thing that draws me to making the hats is I really like textiles and texture and color. I love steaming material and seeing what shape I can pull it into. But it's also such a pleasure because the tools that I work with, most of them are pre-40s and they're like brass and old growth wood. So the tools themselves are beautiful but also very functional and strong. I love them because they feel more solid in my hand. I just love old things. Making hats was attractive because it was nice to be making a product that wasn't just disposable, like made out of a material that lasts a long time and serves a purpose for the person wearing it. I made hats in a more millinery sense, which is women's hat making in high school, being a costumer. I did a lot of textile sculpture and lived in this neighborhood and accidentally met the previous owner. Paul's Hat Works has been in San Francisco since 1918 in this building, and it was passed apprentice to apprentice after that, so I'm the fourth apprentice. The previous owner had been looking for an apprentice for many years and not finding one. So he was getting ready to close down and piece out the store, and he said it was like cutting off his fingers because he'd kept the collection together and built the collection out and really wanted to pass on what he had built and sort of the relationship of the hat shop to the customers. And I got really wrapped up in the romance of that too. think a lot of what I was seeking in San Francisco had been evaporating by the time I got here. But the last 6 years, there's been like a vast change. One of my bad jokes that I say is, I'm not mad as a hatter anymore because we're using chemicals, but because I'm trying to own a small business in an expensive city.
There's an understanding among people who've lived here for a while that gentrification is happening and that we're losing a lot of the businesses that people like going to. It's hard for people to understand exactly how that's happening and why. I don't think they realize the rent that some of the small businesses are being forced to pay by new owners or if their leases are expiring.
The Lower Polk is really struggling with some commercial vacancies right now. It has a negative impact on the livability of the neighborhood. It's obviously not good for the property owner who can't fill their vacancy. And it creates sort of a ghost town environment where you're walking through neighborhoods but there's no vitality and there aren't really people around. We've got a lot of small businesses in the Lower Polk that need to negotiate their leases with their landlords. So that's a really valuable thing that the Lower Polk TLC can do, is serve as a liaison between landlords and tenants who are small businesses.
In a city like San Francisco, where the money flows is how things get done. And the CBDs are a great example of where you follow where the money's coming in and where it's being spent. You can see where things are getting done. And having an ability to see how the CBD works and how this neighborhood is able to augment the services of the city in a way that meets the needs of our neighborhood specifically has been very enlightening.
We've partnered with the Lower Polk TLC to provide free mediation services to residents, tenants, housing providers, master tenants, subtenants, and now through the Lower Polk, small merchant mediation as well. We really do feel that conflict is part of everyday life, and engaging in conflict is really important. And we start small with, can we have a conversation about this?
It's not all about adversarial, tenant-landlord fights, but it's also about giving landlords and tenants a way to mediate between them, to work stuff out. Education, mediation, not only for tenants, but also for landlords. And most recently, they moved from the residential side to the commercial side, which has really been a godsend.
I think Supervisor Peskin, he's a mensch, a Yiddish word for genius. And it's like he really, really gets the issues. He gets people. He really, really cares about the people in our district. And so when he formed this clinic and kind of gave his office extra power to kind of express his level of caring about his constituents, it was like a force multiplier for him. So when we talk to other people, Carol or Charlie or Gabriel, we're all of one mind, we're all of one accord. We think very similarly, we work together. It's just this great coalition. And so if we can spread it to the rest of San Francisco, through the CBDs or through the merchant associations and bring these benefits to more people, we'd love to.
What the hat shop gives me personally, in monetary payment for my work. I need a lot more of it from the shop. So that puts pressure on the shop in a way that's pretty uncomfortable. Owning and operating a in-house manufactured and retail hat shop in San Francisco, I think, has changed in many ways. Juggling the economic pressure that is put on the hat shop so that I can afford an apartment presents me as a business owner with a set of choices. I can scale the company to keep up, but hand-making hats in-house is not the easiest thing to scale. There's not a lot of margins to cut. And when you speed up a handmade thing, there's only so much you can speed it up without sacrificing quality, and that's not something I'm willing to do. Owning a small business, manufacturing in-house, you're gonna work a lot. You're gonna put everything into your business. So I knew that coming in. But I think that particularly now, with how much a one-bedroom apartment costs in San Francisco, the pressure, I think, is a lot more than my predecessors felt. I think I moved 3 times in the past 4 years, and having to worry about stability, home needs to be extra restful to be able to run a business. And when you're moving once a year and trying out experimental living situations, because you can't afford something more solid, it's really hard to follow through in the business. My relationship with my landlord here, thankfully, has been stable. And he's the same landlord the hat shop's always had. Our neighbors in the same building have been here forever, so I'm really grateful for the stability here. Because if I had to worry about my business lease and my housing lease at the same time, I'd totally lose my mind.
One of the things about San Francisco is there's so much new energy all the time, so much great energy, so there's always new places opening up. And I think that can cloud people's understanding of the fact that we're losing a lot of wonderfully creative businesses as well, because there's always new things happening. I think there's been a lot of upheaval in San Francisco in the last 10 years. There's been a lot of gentrification, a lot of people have been displaced. What I'm fearful of is that San Francisco becomes another place with very wealthy people and essentially strip malls.
To keep businesses in business during difficult times, that's a really valuable thing that the Lower Polk TLC can do. General landlord education, it's something that we really focus on. If you can touch a landlord who has 40 tenants and you can let the landlord know what their rights are, but also what their responsibilities are, that you positively impact the lives of each of those 40 residents. So we spend a lot of time trying to focus on educating housing providers and educating property managers in the Lower Polk area, so that they're up to date with community programs, with recent rules and regulations, with industry trends, because what we feel like is an educated property owner or manager can better serve his residents.
We have to take some special care and attention with the small business community, for sure. I think all the history and the powers that be have over time cultivated the small business and tried to keep it thriving and enduring in San Francisco for all the cultural and character reasons of our great city. So we're very happy to be engaged in the Lower Polk merchant side of the house in helping to facilitate those conversations and mediations where needed.